here's the problem with buzzwords and phrases that you may embrace. And I'm going to be very cynical about certain things. And I don't really care what type of shop you are. When someone says we're a lean shop, we're a Six Sigma shop, I really don't know what you're talking about. I know the words, but I don't know what that means to your organization on a cultural level and actual operational level. So the real question is, what are you currently doing and why are you trying to do it? And so what's the methodology? I don't care what you call it. Now, for Procter & Gamble at the time, they were basically doing what they called TQM. And the way I likened it was something as simple as basically an episode of This Old House. I've been given a house that is not necessarily been well maintained. In fact, if you look at this, I put a marble on the floor, it would roll across to the other end of the house. And that was exactly what the house I bought in Cincinnati was like. It was built in 1894. I bought it in 1982. And it basically had sagged and it had been basically mismanaged for decades. And I was going in and I was going to fix it up. And that's what TQM to me was I'm going to take effectively a neglected process. And it's a simple input-output diagram, and I'm going to try to make it better. And it may be a question of just rearranging the interior walls if they're not bearing walls. It may be putting new windows in and so forth. But it's really not doing anything dramatic to the process. I'm just going to clean it up and make it run right. Now, TQM, though, does not and did not necessarily really get into the revolutionary thinking that Hammer and Champy started to speak about in the 1990s. And a lot of people would look at this old house and say, you know what, it's not even worth wasting your time fixing the house. Just blow it up and start over. And that's generally what the reengineering mindset was. And it was being driven from an IT point of view, more though than an operational point of view. So if I take this house, which is sitting on this foundation down here, and I basically get rid of the house and build a new house on the old foundation, what happens if the foundation isn't perfect? So you can basically, you're limited by your support mechanisms. This is generally what we would consider our core processes. This is what our customers pay us to do. What is obvious and visible, what lies below the surface is the stuff that basically our customers don't want to pay for, but they are. And if our infrastructure isn't meeting and supporting our needs up here, that becomes problematic. The infrastructure for most businesses include things like your IT systems, your compensation systems, your organizational structures, the culture that exists, the relationships that exist. This is all the stuff that sits down underneath the ground. And if you do not touch that stuff and you change the work that's done up here, and this is really kind of the whats, this is the whys and the whos and the hows and so forth, you're basically going to end up with a house that looks not much different than the old house if the structure isn't able to support it. So this begins to kind of sit there and say, well, if you're going to re-engineer the corporation, you can't just re-engineer the work, you have to re-engineer the support structures. Now, which does an architect design first? Not build first, because the builder's the builder. Which do they design first? The work or the infrastructure that supports the work? The house or the foundation? Which do they design first? See, in my mind is, I sit down with the user community and say, what are your needs? How many people do you have in your family? What are the types of activities do they do? Do you need outside space? Do you need inside space? And those are the type of things I want to learn. And then I sit there and get into, okay, so what type of design do you want? Do you want a modern structure, a colonial structure, a Victorian structure? I'm not worrying about this at all yet. Once I've nailed the business requirements, then I look and say, okay, what are the zoning requirements? What is your budget? What's the interface to the world? Do you have stone underneath? Is it ledge? Is it sand? Because I'm trying to interface the work with now the world in which it's going to sit. And if you have local rules that are uniquely different from country to country to country, then I may have to have a different interface. And so I may build this first, but I have to design the work first. And if I'm going to redesign the work, I don't sit there and start tinkering with IT systems and org charts until I've defined what the work is. You define the what before you define the who.